what the city is talking about.
The news that impacts you.
Welcome to the Montreal Now Podcast.
If you did not hear the news earlier this week, I think there was a clip from Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon of the PQ announcing, I guess this would be Chapter 1 of what they call their Blue Book, which in essence outlines how Quebec would look or how it would be on the international stage if and when it becomes an independent country, nation. So first of all, that's kind of interesting in and of itself, given everything that's going on. The PQ, of course, have been leading in recent polls. Yes, the election is still a year away. And no, most people don't want to support the idea of a referendum, which is basically plank one of the PQ's platform. So why go to this extent? Let's try to find out. Pascal Paradis is the PQ MNA for Jean-Talon. He is on the line. Monsieur Paradis, thanks for being here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Let's start with you explaining to our listeners what exactly, what is a Blue Book? What does it mean? What does it set out to do?
So Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, our party leader, promised Quebecers that in a book called the Blue Book, the PQ would outline what would like a sovereign Quebec, an independent Quebec. So we are true to our promise. So we released one of the chapters last week pertaining to international relations. So that's a vision of what we could achieve, what we could be, and how we could prosper as an independent country. In this case, participating to the concert of nations, opening to the world, and having our own diplomacy and defending our own commercial interests at the international level.
So as I understand it, at least from what I read in Le Devoir, this would involve opening up embassies in more countries. There are Quebec embassies, by the way, now in other countries, but you're talking about potentially doubling that number?
Well, for the time being, they're not embassies because we are not an independent country. So our diplomacy depends on the Canadian diplomacy, whose interests sometimes are not the same than our interests in Quebec. So we do have a network of delegations, foreign representations in approximately 20 countries. And so what we're saying is after the next election, if Quebecers are putting their trust in the Parti Québécois, which we hope they will do, we will immediately start a process in doubling our network of representations. And after a yes vote at the referendum, then these would be transformed into embassies.
Okay. And I want to ask something else that I believe is in here as well. One of the ideas is to eventually, or at some point, join NATO and NORAD. Is that correct?
Well, it's basically saying that Quebec would notify multilateral agencies and commercial partners that we want to succeed, we want to be the successor state in these agreements. So it's basically saying that we would be a country or becoming a country in a democratic process, and we would look for stability at the international level. And it's also remembering everybody that contrary to what some federalists are saying, that any process leading to a new country brings chaos, it is not the case. International law and state practice both want the same thing, stability. This is good for commercial relationship. This is good for geopolitical interests. And that's basically what we're explaining in this chapter of the Blue Book.
Okay. But again, with respect to my question specifically about NATO, for example, the article I'm reading says Quebec would request the day after a yes victory in a referendum that Quebec be granted a place in international military alliances like NATO, and it expects a positive response. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Where we now, if I understand it, in order to become a NATO member, in order to become a NATO member, right? There's a cost share formula tied to that, right? Which comes off gross national income. So where are we getting the money to pay for that exactly?
Well, we're already paying our share. It's not like this belief that the federal government is gifting Quebec of the investments it's making, for instance, in the military. It's not the case. We're paying for our share. And in a previous document that we released in 2023 pertaining to the finances of a sovereign Quebec, we explain that we would get back our share of the funds we transfer to the federal government, and we would invest those in our responsibilities, in our competences as a country. So it's the same for any of the sectors that are taken care of by the federal government right now. We are paying for these, and we would get the money back. We're sending 90 billion a year in taxes to the federal government. So with the money we're saving in the doubling that the federal government is making in so many sectors like healthcare, like education, these are provincial, Quebec competences, and still the federal government is spending a lot, wasting a lot of money. So we will be saving, we will prosper, and we will be able to invest in our own responsibilities as a country.
Okay, with respect to those provincial jurisdictions that you're mentioning here, they've come up often. I think people understand them, like healthcare, et cetera. With respect to NATO, though, NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We're still part of the North Atlantic, even if Quebec does, in fact, separate. Are we just changing 4 quarters for $1 here? What difference would there be if Quebec was in NATO independently or as part of Canada? I don't understand what the difference would be.
Well, we would be speaking for ourselves. We would be advocating for our own interest. We would be a partner.
Well, okay. How are your own interests any different in terms of being protected as part of an alliance from Canada? Exactly.
Well, when we're talking about defense and protecting the territory, of course, there are presently common interests from Canada, from Quebec, from the United States, which is why we have regional alliances, and these interests would basically remain the same. We agree. But then it's the same thing as saying, okay, so why are other countries speaking by themselves within NATO, within any multilateral treaty? There is a merit in any country, for any nation to speak for itself. It is the same thing when it regards defense and security as it is for commercial interests, for other treaty interests. And what happens at the international level has impacts on the daily life of Quebecers. So speaking for ourselves, representing ourselves is really an essential tool in 2025 as ever in history.
Okay. I'm reading as well. This is interesting as well. So Paul St. Pierre Plamondon said he wants Quebec's image to be, quote, I'm quoting, less arrogant and much more down-to-earth, unquote, than that of Canada. What does that mean?
Well, I think Quebec already exists, as we were saying, at the international level, through international cooperation, to our network of delegations. And I think we are known for our pragmatism, the way that we do not impose. We are deal makers. We have a long history at proposing and being at the forefront of international advances in mediation, in peacemaking. And that's exactly like the trademark, I think, that Quebec would bring at the international level, less in giving lessons to others, but really in participating to the fostering of democracy, of the rule of law, we think that's the distinct voice. The very own voice that Quebec could have at the international scene. So
you say not a history of conflict, promoting peace. And from what I read as well, that would mean that the Quebec office, or the delegation, if you will, in Tel Aviv in Israel, could not operate under the current conditions given what's going on in Gaza. So you would pull out, or you would not have an effective office there as what? A way to protest what's happening?
No, it's effectiveness. So we said other parties have called for the antenna or the bureau to close. Our view is that it was not a good idea to open it and to develop its activities, commercial activities, scientific activities, within the context of the conflict, that the government of Quebec should have waited. We are still of the same opinion.
So I'm trying to understand. You're suggesting then that until what time?
Our representatives at the Bureau of Tel Aviv should be called back in Quebec until the conditions are proper for the development of the bureau there.
And what are those conditions?
Well, we have called many times at the National Assembly with other parties. We have joined our voices to call for an end to the conflict and for peace once again to prevail there. So that's part of the conditions, not having a live conflict on the ground.
Well, okay. If that's the case, it's you may be another 100 years before you're able to go back, if that's how you're going to define whether you go there and open business or not, don't you think? I mean, there's no guarantee of peace in that region. That's the kind of place it is in the world.
It's true. It's true. There's a context. There's a historic context. But still, after the terrorist attack that we have condemned in October 2023, the situation has changed on the ground, and we think that the context was not proper for the development of the bureau there.
So are you taking what seems to me a pro-Palestinian position here?
Absolutely not. We are taking a pro-peace, and we have always been in favor of a two-state solution. And this is independent for whatever was said last week. This is our position since 2023 on the present conflict in Gaza.
Okay, I'm running out of time. I have to leave it at that. I hope we'll have a chance. By the way, you said that the Blue Book is going to be roughly 20 chapters. Is that right?
Exactly. So we are
going to
be releasing parts of it until the beginning of 2026.
Okay. Well, I hope we'll have another chance to chat. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pascal Paradis, PQMNA for Jean-Talon, outlining Chapter 1, at least the beginning, of the Blue Book.
Bringing you the breaking news and the people making it. Montreal Now with Aaron Rand. CJAD 800.
You know by now, of course, if you've been following the story, that first it was 100, then 200, now somewhere closer to 300 doctors who have now applied for license to practice in other provinces, primarily Ontario, some in New Brunswick as well. And this, of course, follows the implementation of Bill 2. Now, you may also remember when the story first broke, basically a day later, Ontario Premier Doug Ford went public, asking doctors in Quebec who were considering leaving the province to call him directly. And he actually gave a number. He went on and said, hey, call me, 1-800-DOUG-FORD. Now, it turns out he wasn't kidding. His number is available online, and our next guest took him up on his offer and heard back. Dr. Caroline Lacroix is an assistant professor of diagnostic radiology at McGill, and she is on the line. Dr. Lacroix, thanks for your time this afternoon. Can I pick up on the story from there? You actually reached out to Doug Ford. What happened?
Yes, so that is true. I was curious, and so it was on a Thursday evening. I was alone home, and I decided to text him. I thought it was unusual and curious that the Premier of Ontario would make himself so available to Quebec doctors, or just anyone, actually, to try to contact him on his cell phone directly. And I was curious to know if that was true, given that in Quebec we have so much difficulties having our federation representative reaching out to our Premier and the Minister of Health, actually, here in Quebec.
So you go ahead, you say curiosity made you go ahead and follow through on the story for us. What happened next?
So a minute after I texted him, a simple question, just a general question about radiology and if there was any website where were listed the position opportunities and locums opportunities. He called me himself, and we chatted for a few minutes. And he was very polite, very welcoming, and basically explaining me how it worked in Ontario and some differences with Quebec. And he informed me that the Minister of Health will call me the following day, which he did.
Wow. I'm reacting this way. I'm wondering how you reacted. First of all, when he actually called you back. I mean, were you completely surprised?
I was very surprised. I did not expect it was true. So that was my main reaction. And then I listened to what he had to tell me. Right, and I appreciated his time, and I kept it very, very short.
And then you did get, as you just said, a call back from the Minister of Health. What was that conversation like?
So she was following up on the question I had sent to Doug Ford, and she did ensure that she had my email address and that she would follow up with any information in that regards, and asked me if I had any other question or any thing I wanted to bring to her forward regarding a possibility of coming to Ontario.
So now I'm assuming when you go ahead and do something like this, you obviously have, beyond curiosity, you have, interest in saying, maybe based on Bill 2, I'm considering moving. So where are you on that particular part?
It's a good question. I'm on the fence. I think I'm still hoping that Bill 2 will not come into effect, that Legault will come to his senses and will take over the leadership and the discussion moving forward for the Minister of Health. And that the situation will resolve itself. That said, I'm a logical person, and if the situation continues to deteriorate, I will consider leaving the province at some point. But this is not my goal. This is not what I want, and I think this is not what any physician in Quebec right now wants. But we are kind of forced into it.
I would ask, by the way, with respect to any hurdles that you would have if you wanted to just, move your practice from here to there, what would that entail? Is it enough to make you think perhaps, no, this is not the way I want to go?
Very easy to move to Ontario, to be honest. Very, very easy. So the main reason I would like to stay in Quebec is because I'm committed to the practice in Quebec, to our patient, to my hospital, to my team. And I obviously have family here in Quebec.
So, there's an interesting survey out that shows, this actually came out just earlier in the week, that most Quebecers are not buying the government's explanation for why we need to have Bill 2, but yet at the same time, a lot of those same people who are polled seem to have the idea that doctors are paid too much, make too much money here in Quebec. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think it's false information. Salaries across Canada are mostly higher in other provinces, at least for my specialty. So I don't think that the information spread by the ministry is accurate. I think it's incomplete information, and it gives the population in Quebec the false sense that Quebec doctors are too picky and asking for too much. But Bill 2 is not just about salary decrease, right? It's way, way more than that. It's an open violation to the Charter of Rights and Freedom of physician and healthcare workers. And then it puts in danger the healthcare system as a whole and patient safety. And this is the most sensitive court for physician. And this combination, the way it was brought forward, the way it was imposed, and the content it has, and the possible safety implication is what makes it really a very explosive mix, and why the reaction of Quebec doctors is so strong at the moment. When
you talk to your colleagues in the field that you practice in, is there a general consensus they will leave, they're considering leaving? What do you hear?
I'm not so much hearing about people wanting to leave as people being extremely concerned. So I'm a radiologist, and in radiology, Bill 2 will have very, very significant and very bad impacts as of January 1st, because our tariff or prices in the billing manual will be cut to a bit less than 87% of our current value. But that includes incomes R7 and R9, which are billed under the name of radiologists that work in medical imaging clinic, but really are not a personal income. Rather, these are sums that are automatically redirected to the clinic management to cover employee salaries, rent, and any expenses related to storing and keeping the images of our studies. And these roles, R7 and R9, have not been increased in the past 10 years or so, and yet the increase in the expenses during that time is of at least 40%, largely due to inflation. So even before Bill 2, medical imaging clinics have been struggling to break even and not be forced to close. But with the additional income loss as of January 1st, radiology specialists are extremely worried that all medical imaging clinics will be put at risk of short-term closure. And even if you include the possible 15% performance bonus that could be given back to the clinics if the ministry targets are met, the delay in giving it back, which is about 4 months, is not sustainable for small businesses to have to pay their expenses as they come.
So just as a final question, you mentioned this is well beyond just remuneration, which some people think it is, but there's much more to this. Hypothetically, if the government does not withdraw Bill 2 and negotiations don't turn out to be fruitful, what do you do next?
I would be in a very, very tough position, I think, as many other specialists and family physicians, because at the end of the day, what doctors want is to give the best care of patient and practice in a safe environment, and Bill 2 is strongly against that. I think it's clear, like the Canadian Medical Association, even the Collège des médecins du Québec, are strongly against Bill 2, and at some point, I think Mr. Legault has to come to his senses and remove that.
We leave it at that. Doctor, I thank you so much for your time. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Introducing Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
Join me for an insider look on a wild ride through 40 years of global rock and roll.
Bryan Adams Radio. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app. Or ask your smart speaker to play Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio.
Who's ready to rock?
Kids wanna rock. The very latest news, reported and discussed. Welcome back to Montreal Now on CJAD 800.
I saw this story and again, did a double take because I thought it was a joke. I thought there's no way there must be more to this. And the story basically asked the question, should poppies be allowed in Canadian courts? My first reaction was, why is this question even being asked? Until I read the next paragraph, which said that in Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan, judges have decided, at least a couple of them anyway, that no, they will not be allowed in their courts, in their courtrooms, with one of them saying, while they understand the desire to pay respect to veterans, allowing for such symbols, referring to the poppy, during courtroom proceedings could tarnish their necessary impartiality. Okay, need to understand more because I've read both premiers, by the way, in Saskatchewan and Nova Scotia have come out. In fact, in Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, who's the president or the premier there, actually came out and said this is disgusting, referring to that judge in his province, saying that in her courtroom this would not be allowed. So, Dr. Dwight Newman is a professor at the University of Saskatchewan. He's a Canada Research Chair in Rights, Communities, and Constitutional Law. And he is on the line. Dr. Newman, thank you for being here this afternoon. Can I begin by asking you your reaction to when you saw this story?
Well, thanks for having me. It was a surprise, frankly, when I saw it as well, because I didn't think judges would be prohibiting poppies. The story in Saskatchewan, though, is with an experienced prosecutor for whom it was very meaningful to wear a poppy, and she's presumably done prosecutions at this time of year before, so it was a surprise that she wasn't allowed to, and it was a surprise when I saw the story coming out of Nova Scotia as well.
So when I read that part about, the judge saying allowing for such symbols during courtroom proceedings could tarnish their necessary impartiality, what do you take that to mean?
I'm not sure that that's well phrased by that judge, but I do think the judge, to be fair to them, is getting at a deeper principle that it would be inappropriate to have various kinds of symbols in the courtroom that could suggest any kind of political affiliation or support for a cause. I just don't think the poppy is like that.
Okay, I mean, I never even thought the poppy or attached any kind of political significance to the poppy. I'm not sure that anybody, at least I've never heard anybody suggesting that. I've never heard ananybody saying, oh, I'd rather you not wear that into the room because it's going to offend some people. So where's the issue here exactly as you see it?
Well, I agree with you. I don't see it as a political symbol, but I think the judges are trying to adhere to a deep and important principle of not having additional symbols in the courtroom, and they've misapplied it in this instance to something that doesn't have that kind of political significance. It's a sign of respect to those who've made the ultimate sacrifice for our country and for the deepest values of our country. But I do think that I don't think they were being malicious is what I'm saying. I think they were applying what they thought is a deeper principle, and is a deeper principle. I just think this isn't the right application for it.
All right. I will point out, by the way, I keep mentioning individual judges in this case, but with respect to Nova Scotia, the heads of Nova Scotia's 2 top courts say they support the discretionary power of a judge to ban legal staff from wearing poppies on their clothing. So it's not as if we have, a rogue judge or two. The ruling from the top court suggests, no, this is perfectly fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's a more recent development on the story, and I saw that as well. I was disappointed by that. I actually hoped the story would move in recent days towards poppies being allowed, but instead the two chief justices in Nova Scotia have instead they're backing up their judge, but in the process they're reinforcing this unfortunate policy.
So can you give us an example? I mean, how would this some way be considered, or, in the case, in these 2 provinces anyway, in these 2 courtrooms, how would this be considered somehow impartial, or not impartial, but partial, really?
Yeah, the Chief Judge and Chief Justice in Nova Scotia came up with an example, which I don't consider especially realistic, or I at least consider it quite strained. And they said, well, what if a non-veteran is charged with the assault of a veteran and walks into a courtroom where everybody's wearing a poppy, and this could make the accused doubt something about the legal process there. I honestly don't think that someone would attach that significance to the poppy, that they would think that's going to play out in some problematic way. I don't think it's a very realistic scenario. They were imagining this happening on November 10th, and I guess if it did, you get that strange confluence of events. The solution might be just to move the trial to the 12th. But in any case, we have other fundamental symbols in the courtroom. There's often a picture of the monarch on the wall, and that doesn't mean that someone who's been charged by the Crown with something doubts the fundamental fairness of proceedings, or someone who's suing the Crown. I don't find their example particularly compelling, but they're trying to go above and beyond, I guess, in ensuring that nobody doubts things. The only trouble is, I think, banning the poppy actually looks worse than allowing it, honestly.
Yeah, this is kind of one of those thou doth protest too much sort of situations, isn't it? I mean, really, at the end of the day?
I think it's them being unduly cautious in applying that principle, and in the process, it actually has an unfortunate consequence that the public's not reacting well to this, understandably. I think the public should be thoughtful of the fact that the judges are trying to just ensure that they avoid any risk of political bias, but I think it's also fair to say they don't agree with this application of that principle, and I hope the courts can be persuaded to change it.
Can I ask as well, again, if we're going to talk about hypotheticals here, which is the rationale you just mentioned here that the judges are using, right? What if a case where someone who's a non-veteran had attacked a veteran? I mean, should someone decide they have a right to wear this, and again, it would have to be on that day because that's the day we're talking about, could they sue the province or wherever the jurisdiction was to say, I have a constitutional right to wear this, you can't prohibit me from wearing it?
There might be such suits in some circumstances. I think that might be subject to limits in the courtroom, and I think a prosecutor is not going to launch that lawsuit, for example. I guess individuals, members of the public, haven't been precluded from wearing poppies. So it would just be participants before the judge, and I don't think they're so likely to put that suit. Okay. But who knows? I mean, we can see the possibility of a real conflict arising here that would be unfortunate.
Well, we're already seeing that, right? You have 2 premiers who've come out and said they don't support this idea. I'm not sure what powers they have to change it, but it's already getting reaction.
Yeah. Well, in Nova Scotia, the Premier is talking of passing legislation. There may be some difficulties in applying that to courts because of the principle of judicial independence.
Right.
even if it does apply, there's a conflict in the process where it would frankly be far better if the court were to come to a different decision on its own, just so that things didn't have to go that route.
Well, let's hope with enough backlash, that is the decision that ultimately gets made here. Doctor, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Oh, happy to talk with you.
Dr. Dwight Newman over at the University of Saskatchewan. So, that situation, this whole idea, and I should clarify, I'm glad he brought it up at the end. It's not about people in the court. It's about staff in the court. So not people, who are not members of the judge's, immediate administrative group. They're the ones who have been told they can't wear poppies. You, as a citizen, can certainly wear a poppy into the court, as I understand this now. But even that's kind of a crazy idea, so we'll see what happens.
Because you don't want to miss a thing. Montreal Now on CJAD 800.
All right, time for us to check in with Chris Dimakos. He is our CJAD 800 legal contributor, and wasting no time dealing with the snowfall and the weird weather and everything else that is going to come from this. So, Chris, snowfall, lawsuits, they kind of go together. You bring up one. So it's good people know this now because we're probably going to run into this again. First one, a condo association sued by an owner who slipped and fell in the parking lot, which was icy, suffered an injury, loss of income, had to go with medical visits. Question, was the condo association liable to pay the slip and fall damages?
Right, and this is a very common occurrence. You have this not only on residential, but on the commercial side. And what the courts look at when you slip and fall on an icy patch, for example, is they take a look at what the building owners, what did they do to prevent this from happening? Did they hire a contractor to clear the snow? Did they hire a contractor to lay down some salt or some sort of abrasive substance to prevent people from slipping and falling? And if the owners of the building, whether it's commercial or residential, if they can show that they took reasonable measures and preventative measures, then you're going to have a hard time winning a case like that. Sometimes you slip and fall, and it's just that, it's a slip and fall, and you can't sue. However, that being the case, we've seen some huge, and the monetary amounts have been skyrocketing for people that have been successful, because in this case here, the condo association had a snow removal company, but they were not paying for that company to salt and lay down some sand. So, in that case, the courts found that, you know what, you could have gone a little extra. You could have paid a little more money to have some salt put down, and that could have been prevented. And that's happened numerous occasions when you talk about shopping centers and people who slip and fall near the entrance. If just the fact that it's clean and plowed doesn't necessarily mean that the owners of that commercial property took every measure, a reasonable measure, to ensure people wouldn't slip and fall. So that's a big one. Seeing salt and sand has been a determinant factor in many cases like this.
Wow, so it's the old an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure in these cases, right? I mean,
exactly. And the other thing is we're starting to see as well, when people have to clean off their cars. You're at work at an office building or a warehouse. You step outside, and then you want to dust off your car, and many times you're not aware of what's underneath the snow. It's been falling all day, and then you slip and fall while you're cleaning off your car. We've seen a number of lawsuits go to court where they're suing the insurance, and the courts have deemed that, hey, you know what? Since you were cleaning off your car with the intent to use it, that's a motor vehicle accident. So you file your claim with the SAC, you get compensated a determined amount, which was probably much less than you would have got had you been able to sue in the private courts. But that being said, these things are deemed as motor vehicle accidents. So all to say, there is a lot going on. Whenever you have a situation where you get hurt because of the weather, you have to figure out, okay, well, who's at fault here? Who's responsible for this? Did I contribute to my pain and suffering? You have to look through all the different variables that are involved in a situation, narrow down, and then you can figure out whether or not you can get compensated for it.
Okay, wait, I'm confused. You're cleaning off your car because you're about to drive. Where is this happening?
In a parking lot.
In a generic parking lot, you were there, you're shopping, you come out, you clean off your car, you fall, and you get to sue?
Yes, you could sue. And what the courts have said was, if it was for a car, let's say, if the car wasn't there, if that element wasn't there, if you were just walking with your shopping bag,
right,
that's a completely different story. But if it involves a motor vehicle in Quebec, we're one of the few jurisdictions that has this no-fault indemnity. In Ontario, for example, if you get hit by a drunk driver, you can sue. Not here in Quebec. We have a no-fault I guess you want to call it a bank. It's called the SAC. They have money, and they pay out a predetermined amount. So any accidents that involve a motor vehicle, even when you're dusting it off with a snow brush, that has been deemed to fall under that umbrella of the no-fault indemnity. So, again, there's a lot of different things that you should consider when you get hurt, because of the weather. And that's the same for walking down the street with regards to the municipality, whether you slip and fall on your neighbor's property. There's a whole bunch of different variables and scenarios that can take place.
Okay, I'm even more confused. Are you telling me that by virtue of the fact that this had something to do with your car, you can now claim this on your own insurance for your car?
Well, not your insurance. We're talking about the SAC with the Quebec government. So, for example, if you can fill out a form with that entity, and you have a doctor's report, and you have all of the different pieces of evidence that they request,
right?
And then they would determine, what the physical injury was,
really?
What the extent is, anything permanent, and then they would award you an amount of money based on the legislation that they have.
Right, which comes out of their bank, in other words, their fund. It's coming from the SAC.
Right, which is paid for by all of our registration fees on our cars. Right.
And would, at that point, I guess your private insurance wouldn't get involved at that point at all if it was coming from the SAC.
Not when it comes to a physical injury. If you get into a car accident or if somebody hits you in a parking lot, then it's your car insurance.
Right.
That would come into effect.
Okay. Other story here, you note, I think this is, you have neighbor versus neighbor. Snow fights, there have been arguments, whatever else. What have you seen here?
Well, we've seen, this gets out of hand, and the more snow there is, these things tend to accumulate over time. So come February, March, you start seeing a lot more of these things. If you ever if you're ever in the courthouse and you walk into the criminal case, you see a whole bunch of cases where one person, threatened a neighbor with a shovel. The other one was, throwing snow with a snowblower, and a rock hit him. So it gets really heated. Homes are becoming, less and less land. They're building bigger homes on smaller lots. So the amount of space you have to be able to manage your snow is becoming difficult for many people. So that being said, I've seen it all. What I can tell you is, you're not allowed to displace snow from your own property onto your neighbors or onto public property. And when that happens, when you do so, it inconveniences other people, and then that's when the conflict starts. And that can even be your snow removal company. You can hire a company that's going to plow your driveway and pile it up on a public street, which usually they're not allowed to do that. And that can cause friction with the neighbor. So you're going to say, hey, it's not me, it's my snow removal company. But your neighbor's going to be saying, well, you hired them, so technically you're as just liable as your snow removal company. So,
wait a sec. Well, hold on. But if you hired a snow removal company, they come come clean your driveway, right? They're not picking up the snow and putting it anywhere else. They're just generally leaving it in front of your driveway on the street. Or is that not allowed now either? You can't do that? That's what you get in trouble for?
In most municipalities in Montreal, you're not allowed to take snow from a private property and put it onto a public space like a road. Now, when you work in snow removal, you usually get a permit, and you get the permit that's issued by the city, and the city can give you permission to pile snow in certain places. But most of the time, it's rare to see a snow removal company that has permission to take snow off a private property and stack it up onto a public space, unless there might be a crescent there or some sort of area where it doesn't hinder access to all the neighboring homes. But it can get really sticky when you start having accumulation after accumulation, 20 centimeters and 15, and all within a shorter period of time. You start seeing all the neighbors starting to get a little less patient with the way that snow is being managed, and that's where these conflicts start.
So basically, you're only allowed to take snow from your driveway in this particular case and put it on your own property and nowhere else.
That would be perfect. If you could do that, that would be perfect. If not, they usually take the snow off the private property and put it into a public space that is allowed. So, for example, it could be a neighboring empty lot that belongs to the city, or they tend not to let you pile it up on the street. But in some cases, especially where it's really, really concentrated, in some cases, there are permissions given to be able to pile snow up on public property.
By the way, I guess it makes sense if I ask the question. You see more of these sorts of disputes in the winter than any other time of year, I guess.
Absolutely, and these are the type of disputes that we have them here. You don't find this down south, right? So, if you're practicing and you specialize in neighborly conflicts, you're dealing with cases that people in close to the Florida and in the southern states, they don't have these types of issues usually with neighbors battling with snow.
Yeah, you have to have alligators or whatever in the driveway.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
Exactly right.
Chris Dimakos, our CJAD 800 legal contributor. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, there you go. Interesting, huh? Didn't know that. Hurt yourself, parking lot, slip, whatever. It's the SAC. The money comes from them, not from anybody else's insurance. Although, as you said, you can sue the mall, for example, if they did not do a good job of cleaning or putting down salt or sand.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.
Bringing you the breaking news and the people making it. Montreal Now with Aaron Rand, CJAD 800.
Carmi, I kind of kidded today. I wrote you back asking, did you get your new, what are we calling it, the iPhone Pocket? Is that what it's called officially?
Yeah, it looks like a giant sock, but they're calling it the Apple Pocket.
So for people who did not see this, by the way, you got to see this online because when I tell you, when I first saw it, I thought it was a joke, right? And then I saw the price and I was sure it was a joke, and I was wrong on both counts. So explain what this is exactly. It's just designed basically to hold your iPhone, right?
Yeah, it's like a giant. It almost looks like a large scarf with a little opening in the middle of it where you slip your iPhone in, apparently securely. I wouldn't trust it, but hey, whatever. So it allows you to carry your phone outside, like on you, instead of sticking it in a pocket. It's available in a whole bunch of different colors, so pink and yellow and orange and blue. And so it's kind of like a fashion statement. Apple has sold textile holders for their phones before, but the last time they did this, they charged $80 US for the privilege. This time they're charging, and get this, upwards of $200 US for the long. There's a short version, which is $149, and then there's a long version, which is $229.
What's a long version? I mean, where's it going to hang down to your knee? I mean, I don't understand. What's the point?
I guess if you just want people to know that you have an iPhone and you want them to see you coming, it's really an attention thing more than anything. I don't know about you, but when I spent upwards of $2,000 or more on a phone, because it's not that hard to spend a couple of grand on a kind of a higher end iPhone, the last thing I want is this thing swinging around on the outside while I'm getting on the metro or walking down St. Catharines. So from a security perspective, probably not the best idea. Better to keep it inside a bag or inside your pocket or coat.
Just think now, if you're going to steal someone's iPhone, you can steal this new pouch at the same time. So it's like a double bang for your buck.
Hopefully it's your color though, right? Like, because I'm not so much of a fan of the neon yellow. I would, but if it's orange, I'm all over it.
You know what? By the way, I'm seeing some social media reaction to this. I've not seen anyone not make fun of this. What have you seen?
Oh, everyone's making fun of it. I'm certainly it isn't the thing for me. I'm really not a sock carrying kind of guy. Although interestingly, folks who know me, I'm a cyclist. I like to ride my bike, and I take my iPhone with me. You never know when you're going to have an emergency, and I have bags on my bike frame. I will take my iPhone, put it inside an old sock. Didn't cost me anything because it had a hole in it. I figured may as well repurpose it so that it doesn't get bumped around or scratched or otherwise ruined. So I was using it long before Apple came out and charged us $230 for the privilege. I'm happy to sell my sock at a significant discount if anybody wants it black, a little bit of gray on it.
And who wouldn't want that? And of course, the beauty of socks is they come in pairs. You lose one, you get another one right away.
They do. I've got a second one ready in the garage in case I lose the first one.
By the way, you should mention this as well, right? If you live in Canada, you can't buy it here.
Yeah, apparently. So in Canada, we can only buy a cross-body strap, which is also $80, and so it's a lot less expensive. That attaches to the phone, and then you just sling it over your shoulder. But no, they're not selling the giant sock in Canada for reasons that are not clear to me. It's only showing up on the Apple US website, not on the Apple Canada website. And of course, Apple never says what their plans are. So if they're planning on selling it in Canada, if you really want one for, I don't know, the holiday shopping season, you may have to shop cross-border. Hold your nose and shop cross-border if you want.
I got to tell you, I brought up the cross-body strap, right, on my screen just to see what this thing was. It's literally just that. It's a strap with a clip at either end, and they want $60 American for it, $59.
Yeah,
it's
and
outrageous.
That'll be $80 here in Canada. And when you take the strap off, it still leaves the little holders in either corner of your phone. So your phone's going to look a little bit odd if you don't always wear it on your person. Again, I can understand that the iPhone is an aspirational product. Apple sells it to a lot of people who they don't buy it because they want an iPhone. They just want the logo. This is really designed for people like that. It isn't really a thing for practicality. Again, swinging $1,000 or $2,000 device around from your shoulder, whether it's on a strap or a sock, doesn't strike me as the height of urban security, and I would not recommend it to anybody.
This has been the Montreal Now podcast.
Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6
on CJAD 800
or through the iHeartRadio app.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice.
Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.